We welcome you back to Birmingham. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Braves head football coach Cedric Thomas joining us after a long day. How you feeling, Coach?
Oh, blessed, Mr. Charles. Still, just an odd, just the event itself. So many more news and news people, more coverage, a lot more resources. You can see that the conference is putting into this thing, and it's just awesome to see so many faces to come support not only this league but these young brothers.
This off season went by pretty quickly. I mean, once baseball season ended in May, and that's been 2 months ago. That 2 months seemed like 2 days.
Yeah, it really ain't off season no more. This thing really, year round now. When you sit there and look at it, ain't no off time. You either on the road recruiting, chasing, your transfer portal, or trying to hold on what you got in house.
We'll talk with Braves head football coach Cedric Thomas. Coach, a couple of weeks in, your players are on campus. How are they looking at this point?
Awesome. It's just good to see all of them there. We only got one scholarship kid that isn't in, and that's Nico, just finishing up some classwork. But other than that, every scholarship kid is in. And so the bodies look good. They're working out. They meshing. And just talking to Spottsville and Sewell, just what was different, personnel-wise and just attitude-wise. Is refreshing, and so the guys are working hard, they meshing, and so it's just good that administration, can't say enough about them. We got all those kids in for summer too, and also did a really good job with a 948 APR after getting 36 kids in at mid-year. So this says a lot about not only the institution but these coaches and administrators as well.
Well, Coach, I'm gonna ask you this. This is the last time I'm gonna bring this up. Okay, I've been talking with folks. We're in a new season, and so you flip the page. This kind of flips the page, getting ready for a new year. But people are still talking about that Jackson game. What would you say to people that are still kind of grinding their gears about it? What didn't happen? They're expecting a little bit more. They're expecting a better game. What do you say to folks who are still kind of, thinking about Jackson State?
They just live and learn. One thing about it, they on the schedule. And so we can right our wrongs. This wasn't the first time that we lost. Even if we lose by one, to me, it's still underachieving. I want to win, and regardless if it's by 40 or less than 40, 39, 1, 2, 3 for me, I still don't want to lose to that team up the street. And so the outcome for me was still just unsettling. And so you got to move on, but you also got to learn from the past. And know, you got to be able to right your wrongs and understand how do you get better from it, But you see, what they did, the rest of the season, and it just says, kudos to them. But also, how can I get my program, going that right direction in year 2, year 3? And so that was my whole deal when I dissected their roster along with Southern and some of the, even Alabama State, teams that's having success with a high usage rate of winning. I want to mimic, what they doing, take some things from a roster standpoint. And so, those guys work hard enough to where they deserve to know what that feel like. And so that's our journey, and that's what we want to do. So it'll forever be, indebted in our brain, and we definitely see them again.
Well, when you look at this season, obviously one of the big stories, it's a bunch of them, but offensively, coming out of the spring, this time last year we were talking about Tyler Macon, right, as the quarterback. We're going to ride with Mako. And then in the spring, obviously, he had a good spring game as wide receiver. How is that transition coming, and how's the quarterback position coming?
It's awesome to see his body when he came back a couple weeks ago. He lost about 10 pounds. Been working with with a wide-out trainer. You could just tell the difference in his functional movement pattern at the position. We're really excited about that, and then just watching Trey and Jalen and even Dre, kind of compete after, the spring and see them going into the summer. With a lot of retention, man, it just, it's refreshing. We're so far ahead of the curve, from that standpoint. But also when you look at the weapons that's on the edge that they'll be able to get the football to, and the 2 tackles that's going to help protect them, you're really excited. We're a better football club, right now. Still got a lot of work to do, but we did work, with a lesser talented ball club, and we had a chance every game. Besides that one, at the end of the year, and I foresee it to be the exact same way. And so these kids gonna work. But we definitely got some bigger and better pieces to be able to help us get over the hump.
So Trey Lawrence, who were the other two?
Jalen Tobit, the transfer from Howard. He had a really good spring, really good summer. He's in grinding now. And then Andre Washington, the transfer from Charlotte. Those are the 3 that's just competing at a high level right now. But with Trey and Jalen, they kind of got the nod right now. And Dre is kind of pushing up the rear. But you know how camp is, you know, injuries and everything else. You know, the days are old is just playing one quarterback. And so all of them got to be ready. But we definitely feel good about that room, but even better about the guys that they got opportunity to get the football to.
So right now, is it safe to say the competition continues
Yeah,
at
most
that
definitely.
position?
Yeah, most definitely. You know, and you know, if I see one of those guys feel like they leading in the head, you know, I'm gonna make that decision.
In the backfield, we're going to talk with Sewell coming up. How do you feel about Sewell and how he's looked in your backfield overall?
You know, my thing with Sewell is like I told him personally. You know, it's just individually how can we help him get to the NFL? We owe him that. He's been around, and then he got to help himself. He got to stay on that jug machine and catch the football better. You know, he got to continue to work on his pass pro. But he left a little meat on the bone too. You know, he get caught the Valley game. He missed a jump cut against Southern. He missed one against Jackson, and so all that makes a difference. You know, for us to be able to help him get to where he want to go. But we also got to take some of them carries off of him. When you look at us, Mr. Charles, last year at that position, we lose one of the running backs in the first game. We lose one before we even get to the first game. And so we out there with 2 walk-ons, you know, taking a bunch of reps, you know, last year. And so it definitely won't be that. You got a bunch of running backs that's returning from the spring. You know, Tyler Citizen, a ULL transfer we just picked up. He's doing an amazing job. You know, Trey Minor, he's doing an awesome job. And so we got some guys to really help, you know, Sewell back there. So he won't have to take that pounding and for a rugged, you know, 12-game schedule.
And then I've heard Coach Frederick when we talked with him earlier, he talked about our offensive line and how that is really going to be a big key in terms of quality and quantity.
You know, Coach Watson has done an amazing job just beating the streets, going and improve that room. And you talking about Andre Barton. You know, Stanchek, you know, we had him at El Paso and called me and said, hey, Coach, man, we got a player for you. You know, we just can't, we want to get back closer to home. He's from Dallas. And Coach Watson hit him up, and next thing you know, he signed, sight unseen. So he's on campus, he's working. He's about 6'5". I'm about 285, you know, at the tackle. Then Shardaeus Taylor, a transfer from Southern Miss via East Mississippi. And I finally got a kid from Vicksburg, you know, and so that's awesome. Anytime we can. I think that's a trifecta for me. I got one from Natchez, one from Vicksburg, one from PG. Now I got to just, you know, catch up with Fayette. I think I got Fayette. We're going to call Sewell.
Yeah.
And so that's the trifecta for me. But, I mean, really, really good player. And he's on campus now. He's on campus running, lifting, and working. And so that position would be so much better. Now you could take the Jackson Pickett's, who ended the year at tackle, but really a guard, and put him inside. You know, and then you get Jaden Bryant, the all second team all MEAC right guard from Norfolk. He coming in, you know, at the right guard. He's starting. And so we got some really good guys, a lot of depth. Derek Cooper from Rancho Cucamonga, a big freshman that's in on campus now. You know, so we'll definitely be a better ball club just in the trenches alone.
And we talked about the wide receiver along with Mako. Who were the other players at wideout we're looking at?
Yeah, so Charles, you can take all them wideouts that we had last year except Tyron and move them in the slot now. You know, there's Damon Jones, there's Amarion Blakes. You know, all those guys will go inside. You know, they don't have to play out wide now. And then you bring Jarvis Rush in. I appreciate Chris Blair. Just a little backstory. You know, he leaving Akron. That's like his little mentor. He said, Coach, man, you know, I got this wide out. He thinking about going to Jackson. I was like, nah, Chris, you know, we need him. I remember when he was at Holmes. And so Coach Gales and Coach AR, they drove up that same day. They walked around Walmart for an hour till his mom got home from work up in Louisville. And when they got there, his granddad came in dressed from Alcorn head to toe and was asking what took y'all so long. And so we got him on campus. He's doing an amazing job. You pull his highlight tape up. You know, he's catching balls against Ohio State. You know, these names I'm naming, Reggie Davis in the backfield, these guys played. You know, these ain't guys that just you see practice film on. And so he's done an amazing job, you know, going through the spring with us. Nico Sanderford, he's the last scholarship kid, big-time wideout. That's athletic that we're waiting on. And so all those wideouts we named that was with us last year besides time, we're just moving them inside, you know, to play the slot. And they'll be really dynamic. Those guys played. And so we just had to get bigger on the perimeter so whoever the quarterback is can have a bigger target and somebody to get the football to him.
So in this offense, this box storm is just you got the right pieces to make this box storm better.
Without a doubt. You know, without a doubt. I stand on that. The guys did a really good job. You will definitely see a more dynamic offense. It won't be one-dimensional. You think of Alcorn in the past, it was, just lately it was Nico Duffy and Agent Zero and Sewell was the fourth running back. And now we got 4 legitimate running backs, but we also got guys on the perimeter that looks like the Warren Anthony's, that look like the C.J. Bowler, that can catch the football and spread the field vertically for us. And so we're excited about that, but you'll definitely see a more dynamic offense.
Defensively, Coach Deion Roberson, this is his second season and tackling that. What are some of the things that you're looking at on that side?
Beef up front. Beef up front. I went back and watched every snap, about 4 or 5 times. And, we got pushed around in two of the big games. And so we just wanted to, get bigger. And we did that. That defensive staff, did an amazing job. You get Caden Kenny returning, but you also go get Deshaun Palmer, who I just seen bench 400 pounds. And ain't nobody did that since Sterling Shippey. He's down there. He's moving weight. You got Roscoe Malloy from East Mississippi, junior college transfer. He's in the spring, and in the summer working out with us. You got Kenny Andrews returning, from the spring. And all these guys, played a lot, from junior college and got some experience. But they just give us a much-needed, beef up front inside. So now Spotsville don't have to play in the trenches at 255. He can go on the edge and play a true defensive end. Now you got, EJ, playing on the edge at 240, where you had, Kayvon Henderson that was 190, 200 pounds. And so you won't see them guys out there, and so that's going to help us. And now with Steve returning, he makes everybody better. And so now he don't have to spend a whole lot of time in the A-gaps trying to tackle people. He can run to the edge and track things down just because we'll have enough meat inside and won't get pushed around. And so excited about the D-line. Excited about the linebackers. Got a lot of retention there. Ced Roberts, he's going into his red shirt sophomore year. He's doing an amazing job. Jaquez Dew, he's battle tested. He's been in the program 3 years. We got a lot of linebackers that's runners and hitters that's going to really help us. And then, when you get to the back end, wanted to get bigger. Patrick Kent's 6'2" corner. He had a really good summer. Had a really good spring. He's doing an amazing job.
You gave some height requirements, too, in terms of that
most
back
definitely.
end.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we did that.
Can't be any shorter than who? In terms of height.
Yeah,
like.
Andrew Smith and me. Them guys got to be, we got to be bigger. Unless you can just jump on top of the building and dunk the basketball doing a 360. I'm not saying that we won't take small DBs. But when you look at the Jacksons, you look at the Southerns, them guys 6'4", 6'5", Fertillion and all those guys, it's just hard for a small DB to be able to do anything with them. And so we wanted to get bigger, and those coaches did it. They did an amazing job and not lose the speed and the athleticism. So we got some guys on the edge that can run, that's athletic. We got some physical safeties. T.J. Jasper's coming in, Tyreek Snow. He's doing an amazing job, and still you got guys like Bakari, McCall that's returning. And so we're excited. We got some well-needed depth, I can tell you that. Just doing the special teams now, when we put these names in, it's a lot of guys that we looked at last year, and we're like, wow, man, it's amazing. We even had an opportunity to win some football games just because we had so many walk-on guys that was really trying themselves. And like I told everybody, Mr. Charles, I wasn't going to come in and tear this whole roster up and go get transfer portals. I was going to develop the program with the guys that we feel like can help us, and I was going to continue to build a program. I'm just not into, getting rid of 35 kids and trying to bring 35 kids in. And so you'll see a lot of the kids who played a lot. A lot of those guys, you will see the enhancement of them. But you'll also see some guys that might not play as much who played a lot last year.
Special teams kicking. Talk about where you are there.
Yeah, you're the first person today that asked that question. The very first, I never got a question pertaining to the special team out of anybody, and that's huge. But we got Brandon Wilcock. He was a second-team All-MEAC kicker for Norfolk. He'll be kicking the football with us. He was with us this spring to take the replace of K. That was amazing improvement. Kenny Dozier, a junior college long snapper. He's coming in. So we got those pieces taken care of, along with Demetrius, a Hampton transfer, to be able to put some pressure on Frank and continue that depth. So everybody on the football field now is at least 2 to 3 deep with a bunch of competition.
Oh, that's pretty in depth in terms of going over the roster, and it's now it's a different landscape now too with this June 7th kind of changed things with this new landscape that we're in. How does that, in terms of roster and all that, how do you foresee all this going because I've been talking with different ADs today, different coaches. It's definitely the June 7th kind of changed everything.
Yeah, it has. It's just a different landscape, in totality, Mr. Charles. Just I don't think anybody really understand what we go through, and these coaches, day to day. We get Steve to return, as All-American, All-Conference kid, and then another kid leave because he don't feel like he gonna have opportunity, to play. And just where we come from, we just competed. Kids, we worked hard, and we cheered our guys on if we wasn't out there. But it's just a different landscape. And so, you was requesting my, interviewing timing early, but I just couldn't do it. One, because my wife, she lost her mom. And also, I don't want to get on here and start name dropping and saying kids' name and then they gone. And we got 3 kids in the last, maybe 30 days that's no longer with the program that I felt like would have been a staple of what we doing. And so I just think it's unfair for the guys that's here, for them to not be called, and then we calling names, and all of a sudden until we kick it off, they don't show up or they fly the coop.
Well, you talked about Sewell. What about Spotsville? What do you expect from him?
I think he's going to dominate the line of scrimmage. It's going to look different from what Malachi did. Malachi was such a phenomenal pass rusher. He might not get, as many sacks as he did, but he's just going to anchor the run game down, and Malachi was a great, pass rusher, but, sometimes, he kind of got handled a little bit because he was only 245 pounds. And Spot, he'll be able to anchor that thing down with a run game, won't fall off the table, to them linebackers and to the safeties. And then he just got to continue to work on his pass rush. So when we do need a sack like the Prairie View game where Malachi shut a lot of games down for us because he could put that pressure on the quarterback. But you just look at his physique and you look at his frame and you're sitting there saying, he had to play inside last year. And he was just too small for inside. So now we get to move him on the edge. But we're expecting Spot to dominate this year. He's a leader. The guys look up to him, and just talking to, him about what was the difference in last year's and this year just as far as the guys. them guys really fellowship with each other, and them guys really care about each other. So we're excited, about this new football team we got.
And there's some additions to your staff. Coach Fosselman coming from Prairie View. Talk about that.
Man, that's huge. He's been a champion. He know what it's like. To hear him be in last week and see the kids running, and doing things, and he's saying, man, these guys don't complain. And I'm telling my coaches, that's awesome that he says that, but also, our guys ain't complaining, but they beat us for, basically 2 championships. And so, I want him to talk to the kids and let them know, what was the thought process about Alcorn when he was at Prairie View, and also help Coach Rowe because he's been a coordinator in this league. He can use his notes to be able to help game plan, and so I don't have to spend as much time in there. So Mississippi guy, born and bred, he one of us. I always, looked up, mentored him and just watched him from afar. So it's good to just get him back home. And, the new one on the staff, the new baby is Tyron McCullough. McCullough be with us. He'll have the nickels and be with me, helping me out with the safeties. And so we're excited. He played for us just recently and always stayed in touch. I knew he had some insight for the game and loved being around. And so when I gave him a call and asked him if he want to be a part, he said it's a no-brainer. And so that round out, the new additions to the staff.
So a lot of moving pieces there.
Yeah, so, I'm going to be in it. I'm going to be in it, Mr. Charles. I'm going to have the safeties. And I'll give McCullough to help me, but he'll be bouncing back from the nickels. But just Fosselman in the room, was really huge. I think that was a slam dunk for us to be in the conference, to help Rowe. He's been a coordinator, very humble young man, and then he's a Mississippi guy. So when he get the hog going, he's not overwhelmed leaving Prairie View about what he don't have. For him is, how can I enhance it, Coach?
Well, talk a little bit about, Coach, the schedule here over the next couple of weeks.
Everybody was talking about, and rightfully so, the way we started. But for me, we started the same way last year. We had 2 or 3 games on the road. Now the competition won't be as sturdy as it was as Vanderbilt and UAB, but it's still, a road warriors mentality. We got to get on the road and roll our sleeves up. The good thing is this team should be a lot mature team, should be an older team with a lot of retention and guys returning. So we expecting, to be able to get on the road and do really good things. Don't want to start off slow and take anything for granted, just with this Northwestern ball club, because with the transfer portal, it's an easy transition. You can flip this thing in a year. And so, not knowing what they having and not being able to see them a lot, just because of the changes, it can be a problem. But we're excited, to be able to take this thing on the road starting out. And down the stretch, we got Guys where we feel like in a good situation, they got to come to the reservation. So we're going to weather the storm, play a really good brand of ball, start off, fast, and, have something to say when it comes to October and November.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate it. We appreciate you sticking around, and we'll be talking to you next month once you get camp started.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Mr. Charles. Anytime.
All right, we'll take a time out here. When we come back, we'll have Gideon Sponsville as well as Ja'Cory and Sewell coming up. We'll start with Sewell. We'll start with Sewell first, and then we'll get Sponsville, and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see, is Sam Shade still here? Yeah, he's still here, and we'll quickly get them, and we'll wrap it up here. So we'll take a time out. We'll be back from Birmingham after this.